because I'm recording as well as Shay. So
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. So, Yvette, for the cameras, can you please state your complete name?
Yvette Nicole Harris.
Okay.
Nicole added.
And when were you born?
I was born in 1967, July 11th, 1967. I actually have the same birthday as one of our cousins, Howie Dingle, who is my second cousin. His father was my first cousin.
Okay. And where were you born?
His father's mother and my mother were sisters, Blanche Dingle.
And where were you born?
I was born in LaGuardia Hospital in Queens. And I grew up across the street from Baisley Park. I lived across the street from Baisley Park in Queens until I was 3. And then we moved to Rosedale.
Okay. You are you an only child or do you have siblings?
Well, apparently, according to my brothers, I was actually left on the stoop and I was adopted. So that's how they told the story. But no, I was the third child, only girl. My older brother, Lester, my middle brother, Morris, and Morris and I, who they call Mo, he and I are 12 years apart. So technically, Mo was 12 when I was born. And the story goes that he was at camp and when he came home, there I was. And he apparently asked my mother, like, well, how long is she staying? Because in his mind, it had always been just the 4 of them. And then here I come. But my mother always wanted a girl. She wanted a boy and a girl. And she had 2 boys. So I guess, one night they came home and that was it. Well, she wrote.
She said, hey, they must have said, hey, one more chance. We got one more shot. Who is your mother?
My mother, Minnie Harris. My father, Donald Harris. My mother's parents, George Myers and Ola Myers. And I'm trying to think of, I don't know. Do you know where he is on the children in terms of? I don't know.
I want to say George was the oldest.
Was he?
That's what I want to say.
Yeah, I guess he was. Yeah, George.
Right.
Yeah, he was the oldest. Yeah, So he was the oldest. My mother was born in Orangeburg, South Carolina. But apparently she couldn't take the heat in the South. So she came up to live with my Aunt Mary, who's the oldest sister out of the Myers sisters. So that was how she got to New York.
Tell us about your mother.
My mother was amazing. She had a very infectious laugh. Like you always knew when she was somewhere in or near, because all you would hear was laughter. She was, very kind. Because my mother didn't work after I was born, she stopped working. So my mother was the one that would go up to school for like all of her sisters when anybody was sick, when they got in trouble. It was my mother. My 16th birthday, I had a sweet 16 party because she was very, very big on birthday parties. So I had a birthday party like every year, and I remember my classmates were like, is your mother drunk? Because my mother was the first one on the dance floor and the last one on the dance floor. And I was like, no, my mother doesn't even drink. Like she doesn't even drink champagne. She doesn't drink anything. I said, now my father, on the other hand, he's probably over there by the bar having a cocktail, But, she was one of the sisters that really kind of held a lot of the family together, just in terms of the way she just carried herself, like come to her for advice, just, yeah. But, and it's so funny because I don't really speak to her. I don't really speak in terms of her not being here. I really always feel her presence, especially when I became a mother, and just all of the things that she told me once, just wait till you become a mother, and just different conversations that I'll have with my daughter. I could definitely hear my mother's like, yep, see that, you remember when I told you that? So I always feel like she's just a complete part of my life, you know. And she was the Meyer sisters. If you know anything about the Meyer sisters, they were all loud, personable, you know, gift of gab, talkative, you know, just, and they all were like that. And then you know, and it's so ironic that the last living sister passed away 2 years ago on Vi, you know. So it's just, I never thought that I would be in a time frame where they weren't all around, because they were close. They were always together. If we weren't over one sister's house, we were over another sister's house, and then they all kind of showed up, you know. So it was just very, very close knit. And they didn't move in, you know, they didn't do things without checking in with one another to get some advice, or, you know, even if they didn't take the advice, they would still call for the advice, you know. So it was just a very nurturing upbringing, you know, that I had. That, you know.
Two things that I was fortunate enough to know your mother and spend time with your mother, you know, in my younger days. Two things that I always remember, and I'm going to ask you to speak about them. Mm-hmm. Number one, your mother's smile and laugh were infectious.
Yes.
And number two, she was adventurous. Adventurous in a way that she always liked to be doing things. She wasn't, you know, she wasn't the lady who was afraid to jump in the pool because her hair was going to get wet.
Well, because the way just the bride and the groom had just said I do, and we're in the back part of Cody's house, and my Aunt Blanche is saying, I know you didn't wear your bathing suit under your dress. What are you gonna do? She's like, as soon as they say I do, I'm getting in the pool. Because my mother loved any form of water. Like, that's how I was very fortunate to travel a lot as a youngster, but my mother we didn't go anywhere that didn't have a beach. Like, that's how she picked her vacation spots. If it wasn't by a body of water, my mother would be like, yeah, I have no interest, I'm not going. You know, so definitely adventurous. She was on the swim team actually up until the time she got sick, you know. She went bowling. She was on a bowling team. The funny thing is, which they always laughed about, she went to Atlantic City weekly or every other week on the you know, the senior trips. Mother would, and you know, because people would be like, oh my God, your mother's a gambler. I was like, my mother took the amount of money that she was going to gamble with, and if she won, she put that away, or she put, you know, or play with that, but she never went beyond anything else. Now, Aunt Blanche, on the other hand, would sometimes come and be like, Minnie, give me another 20, you know, but my mother would only spend what she said she was going to spend or lose. And then she would read a book, or she'd go to the shops, or, you know, she just went because like a lot of her friends went, her sisters went, you know, so, but she was always open to trying new things, going to new restaurants and, you know, going different places, doing different things, always bringing something to the sisters to try and say, you know, let's do this. They traveled a lot. They had this social club called, what was it called? Les Tours or something like that. I never really knew what they did. All I knew was that they had dances every month. Each member did a party in their basement. You know, they'd have a club meeting, and then everybody would come afterwards and party. And every time you ask, like, well, what do y'all actually talk about? You know, it was like a secret. They went on cruises together. My mother they went one year, Oceanic. Remember that was the name of the cruise line that would go out of New York? Mm-hmm. And I remember they went and they came back. My mother had gained like 10 pounds. And I was like, how'd you gain 10 pounds? And she's like, I don't know. I did everything, you know, I went shuffleboarding, I was, you know, swimming, I was doing, she said, now your father, on the other hand, all he did was sit and drink his scotch, and he lost 10 pounds. So she was very upset about that. So that didn't go over very well in the house for a good 2 weeks.
What's the let me not say overwhelming, but what's the one big trait that your mother left in you? Like, if your mother, you know, liked to do all of these things and she had a way about herself, What of that was instilled in you?
So I'm very grateful for the gift of service. You know, we would go to church every Sunday, and we would drive down Garabua Boulevard in Queens, going to Calvary Baptist Church. And every week, my mother was picking up somebody, you know, from the bus stop. And, you know, I'm in the back like this, because there's, you know, always a million people getting in the car. And I'm just like, so I'm saying to myself, like, they don't have cars. Like, can't they get on the bus, you know? But after watching her as I got, you know, got older and understood, there was just something about the effortless that she would give, you know, give of her time, her resources, her talents, her listening ear. And it really, really stuck in me, you know, as I got older and started doing things and didn't realize until I got, you know, maybe in my 30s that I had really picked up all of those things from her and really valued the gift of service. So that's one thing that I'm extremely grateful for, that I had the sense enough to really pull that part, you know, and really kind of make it, you know, and be very intentional that it was a big part of my life. So.
Great. Tell us about your father.
My father, Donald Harris. So Donald Harris met my mother at Chock-full of Nuts. He was what do you call a delivery carrier? What do they call postal? Work for the post office.
The mail carrier, right?
Mail carrier.
Mail carrier, yeah.
Mail carrier.
And she was a waitress there, and that's how they met. And that's history. And then my father, he was in the Army also for 4 years, and he then went on to the police force. He became a detective. He was a detective for about 28 years, and then he retired. And my mother had him doing so many chores in the house that he went back to work and worked for legal aid for an additional 11 years. So it was really nothing. My father was a very quiet man. But when you got him talking about something that he was interested in, you would be like, well, who is he? Because he hasn't shut up in like, you know, an hour. So he loved to talk about the force. He loved to talk about his job. He liked to tell you, you know, different scenarios and, you know, just different things like that. So that's how a lot of my friends would kind of engage him. So it would be funny when I first started dating and guys would be like, oh my God, you know, like, what's your father like? I was like, you're going to be okay with him. You need to worry about my mother because she's going to put you through the ringer, you know? And it was funny because they had very different personalities. You know, my mother was the social life, you know, she set all the agenda for all the activities for the family. And my father, you know, he could care less. If you let him sit on his chair and watch the game on Sundays, he was good. Like, he was like, I don't need to go, you know, but he did go. And they just had a very kind of, you know, relationship that was really very balanced, you know, like they brought something to the table for each, you know, she brought the extrovert and he was really more introverted. My father was my biggest fan, you know, like there wasn't anything that he wouldn't do for me. And, you know, he and I, it's funny because he annoyed the heck out of me when I was younger about certain things. Like, he was just very meticulous about things. And I am the same way now with my daughter. So it's hilarious when I have to think, I hear myself and I go, oh my God, did I just say that? Wait a minute. What? Oh my God, I've become my father, you know? But he, you know, after my mother transitioned, he was with me, you know, for some great experiences. I received a presidential award. It was the second highest medal that you can get, that we got when I worked for the United States Environmental Protection Agency. I was working on a project. And so he came to DC with me, you know, for that event. I got an award with, that was presented by Kim Hampton from the WNBA. And who else did, Red Alert presented me that. And I remember we were all sitting at the table at the Puck building, and Red Alert was 100 then, you know, he's probably like 200 now. And my father was just like, how old is this guy? You know, he looks like he's about my age, you know. Yeah, so just, you know, my father just had a very very good spirit about him, very responsible, you know, but you didn't cross paths with him, you know, if you didn't want to get tackled.
Yeah, I remember your father as being very mild-mannered, but I also remember how excited he would be to talk about things that he really could get into. And I got a chance to spend a little time with him out in Las Vegas. And you know, when he was living out in Las Vegas and you know, going to his place and you know, just how he was. What's that one thing that you and I think you were already kind of talking about it, that you take from your father?
So from him, I think that he really instilled in me that I could do anything that I wanted to. Like, he would always say, you can do anything that you want with our support, and, you know, determination. And so when I was growing up, I grew up believing I could do anything, like anything. If I set my mind to selling my lemonade in front of my house, I could do anything. I think the only people that brought the lemonade were like my surrounding neighbors. I don't think they brought it because it was good. They just brought it because they had to support, you know. Mm-hmm. But he really had me just instilled in me that I could do anything. Like, just, you know, if you try and you want it enough, you can succeed at it. So I've never been afraid to try anything. Even when I got old enough to know that certain things I might try that, you know, it might not work out, or I might not get as far as I want, it didn't prevent me from at least trying, you know. So I think that's a big thing that I take, you know, that I definitely took from everything that he taught me. Even when it was hard, when I didn't really believe it in myself when I was younger, you know, really younger, until I started to kind of grow a little bit. And then I was like, you know what, I can do this, you know, okay, I can do this. Yeah. So. Yeah.
My next question has to do with, what do you do for a living? And the statement that I'm going to make,
I do PR, JC, I do PR.
is that you're a businesswoman and entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what you do?
So I am a owner and founder of my own company, Harris Public Relations. And I've been in business since 1996, which I'm very proud of that. I'm only 22, but, you know, do the math. So basically, what is PR? So what I am charged to do is to garner maximum amount of exposure for my clients through television interviews, radio interviews, now blogs, TV interviews, but just making sure that they're always positioned in a good light, and that it could be a service that they provide, it can be an initiative, it can be a product. I also do special events management. I also do crisis communications management, which is actually what I started out doing, because I used to work for the Environmental Protection Agency, where I managed the public relations and for about, oh my God, I had like 20 some sites, Superfund sites, and that's the cleanup of hazardous waste sites. So that was a lot more crisis communication stuff. And, you know, a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, I just made a decision that everything that I worked on and everybody that I worked with had to have some sort of give back or some sort of, you know, philanthropic arm to whatever it was that they were doing. So it really kind of guided me in terms of what clients I would accept. I'm a huge supporter of our Black and Brown communities and telling those stories. So that's a huge part of the narrative of my company. You know, the news is not necessarily always fair and balanced to Black and Brown people. You know, I realize that you have to cover, you know, news people have to cover the crime and the things that are not so great. But I also believe that they are to cover the good things that come out of our communities. And sometimes that's often overlooked for various reasons. So, you know, it's kind of my mission to kind of help move that needle and make sure and hold people accountable. You know, and I've been able to make some really great strides, especially in South Florida, where, you know, myself and one other PR friend of mine, we literally went around to all of the media outlets. One, to put them on notice, and two, to also just be a resource for them, because sometimes people don't, you know who the great people are in the Black and brown communities. One, because they don't take the time to get to know them like they do other communities. But so, you know, we offer ourselves as a resource, and we also hold people accountable. I remember we went to the Sun Sentinel, which is a newspaper here in Broward. And I remember going into the building, and the only two Black people that I saw in the building were the people that were working the security that let us in. You know, and they were really nice, and we chatted with them for a little while. And then we went up to the newsroom, and I didn't realize, well, then they told us, you know, we were in the newsroom, and we were part of their morning meeting. So how they decide what the news of the day is, you know, that they're going to cover and everything. We were in that meeting. So the woman who is the publisher, she was like, okay, we can start. So there were about 7 of us, well, about 7 reporters and editors. And then there were 4 people on the phone, which I knew who they were. And she was like, okay, we're going to start now. And I go, you're going to start now? Are you sure? You know, we're not waiting for anybody else. And she was like, oh no, everybody's here. And I was like, you don't have any Black people on staff? Mm-hmm. And my friends was there and kicked me, because normally she's the one that's rah rah. I'm usually the one going kumbaya. Well, maybe there's going to be some changes you can make and blah, blah, blah. But this time I was just like, what? We're in Broward County. And you don't have. And she was like, oh, well, you know, so-and-so writes. I said, he writes about like frivolous stuff. Like who are your Black people that are on the staff? How are you writing about news and you have nobody Black in the newsroom? Like, how does that work? You know, so it's been an ongoing thing. It's a struggle every day, but I'm really very committed to it because I see how they cover other communities. You know, one year, I remember there was this young man in Miami Shores, which is a predominantly white, you know, neighborhood. And one of the local stations had covered this, you know, literally, I think he found a cat. It was something similar, you know, like that. And they did this whole big thing, and they, you know, interviewed his family, and they talked about how he did in school. And, you know, it was a really nice piece. It was great. I pitched a student who, at the time, President Obama had invited him to the White House. He was top of his class. He came from a struggling single mom household. Like, he had done all of these things, like just a student, volunteered, like, you know, it was just amazing, you know, and the challenges that he faced, you know, not having food, you know, like just all these things. And I remember the producer, she was like, yeah, you know, we got, you know, producer's really interested, but, you know, and I was like, what, you know, what else do you need? Like, what? She's like, well, you know, like, did he invent anything? And I thought she was kidding. I was like, did he invent anything? No, he didn't invent. What? I said, you're kidding, right? She's like, well, did he? And I said, and now, mind you, she's a Black reporter asking me this question. And I was like, no, he didn't. I said, but you know what? I'm removing this story from your station. So just don't worry about it. She's like, let's see what we can do. I said, no, that's okay. And that was the first thing that I brought up at the meeting when we went there in this all white room, because there was nobody Black there. And I said, you know, you covered something in Miami Shores that was, you know, it was a nice feel good story, but it wasn't, you know, a game changer like the one that I pitched. And I said, and you wanted this young man to he didn't need to invent anything. Like, we don't need to do anything extra to get the coverage that we deserve, you know. So
Yep. Well,
if anybody keeps up with my Facebook rants, they usually know that every week I have some sort of cause that I'm fighting, and, you know, but I just believe that you know, even if you're just one person, you can make a difference in your community, you know, some form, shape, form, or fashion.
I remember when your mission for your company changed, and I keep thinking, I think about it from this standpoint. When Oprah Winfrey first came out and had her talk show, there was a time that she was starting to go down the road of the Phil Donahues and Ricky Lakes, and where it was really more tabloid,
Right.
types of stuff that really wasn't going anywhere. Okay. And but Oprah was starting to go there, but then she made a conscious decision that she wanted to do things that were going to lift the spirit and the soul. I remember you going through a kind of transformation because, as you mentioned, you wanted to be dealing with people that had some type of a mission of where they were were really trying to make a difference. But you also, before that, you made that change. You were dealing with a lot of celebrities. Can you elaborate a little bit on?
So I did deal. I had celebrities, but they weren't necessarily I worked with them through events and stuff like that, so it always kind of came as a package deal. I mean, I have worked with some individual one-on-one celebrities, but celebrities, a lot of them need babysitters, and it became the point of, for me, I always work with people that have kind of a same spirit about them and that I vibe with, and they don't think that I'm, that they're any better than me, and vice versa. Like, this is just what you do for a living. And for me, I just didn't feel comfortable with anybody, treating me any old kind of way, because I work really, really hard, So I have had the opportunity to work with some great celebrities. I've had the opportunity to work with some that I'm like, what would your grandmother say if she knew you were acting like this? Like, really? So I think one of the moments for me that really caused the change was, I started to think about legacy, and I started to think about, like, what image am I setting for my daughter? And, like, what do I want people to remember my work? How do I want to people to remember me? And, and how do I want to show up for people? You know what I mean? So those things were a huge combination of why I just said, yeah, and then I just, some clients, I was just like, no, I'm not gonna put up with this, because a lot of times I didn't even realize that, some of the stuff that they would say was sexist, or it was, like, just inappropriate. And then as I started to really, kind of really think about it, I was like, yeah, this is what? Wait a minute. I'm a grown woman and you're saying that to me, one, I don't deserve it. And two, did I mention I'm a grown woman? Like, really? Would you talk to your daughter like that?
Right.
So it was a combination of some things that I had to clean house with some clients that were very, very surprised, because I guess they thought it was like forever, ever. And I was like, never, ever,
Yeah.
So.
And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but some of the stories, hey, I don't want to be driven around in a car that's any more than a year old. Some of those kinds of stories. Or, hey, why don't I be your celebrity?
I need two cars. But he's only coming by himself, right? Yeah. Oh, he needs a car for his luggage. What? He doesn't travel with his luggage. What? You can't make this stuff up. And for me, it's so sad. It's like, wow. And a lot of times these are people that come from such humble beginnings, and to get like that, and I'm like, wow, you know what? If I ever come into that kind of money, I would hope that it would not change the core of who I am. You know what I mean? Like, it's quite sad, because unfortunately some celebrities are not happy no matter how much money that they have, and when you really have an opportunity to kind of sit down and talk to them, you realize how unhappy and how much either trauma that they've experienced, or just how alone they feel in the world, and for me, I feel more sorry for them than anything, because that's got to be a hard life to kind of navigate through. It's like, I might not have as much money as you, but I've got peace. I'm happy for the most part, so.
Tell us about your daughter.
And you can't take any of that stuff with you anyway.
That's right.
Tell us about your daughter.
My amazing daughter. 16 hours, no drugs, until they took me to the hospital. I labored at the birthing center. I was in a little bit of denial when I went. Yeah,
I remember all the Caribbean music being played.
Yes, right. So her due date was December 10th. So December 8th, I had an appointment with the midwife, and I went in, and I remember being so tired because by that time I was good and pregnant. Like Thanksgiving had just passed, and my friend Renee had invited me over to her family's house, and I must have had several plates of food, like no joke. I was like, this is probably the last time I'm going to be able to eat like this, you know. And so I went to the birthing center on the 8th. And no, I didn't. Did I go? No, I went in the morning for my exam. And then I asked her, I said, so when do you want to see me again? She's like, well, either tonight or Friday. Because she gave me some exam that I, like, to this day, I was just like, I know I can't explain the guys, but women who've had kids, they know. So I said, well, okay, I'll see you Friday. Because I knew I was tired. I wanted to go home. I just wanted to eat. And I was going to take a nap. And I remember going past the bathroom to the kitchen. And I looked down on the floor and I saw water. And I was like, what the heck? Did I go on myself? And I went to the bathroom. And just the whole gush of, water came out. So my best friend, Michelle, who was writing, I don't think she ever wrote that book. She wanted to write a children's book, and she wanted me to kind of take her through the process of my birth story, something like that. So her thing was I had to look for the mucus plug, which is this little piece that comes out. So I'm in the toilet looking for this mucus plug for her, and I'm like, I don't see it. I don't know. You think maybe I should call the birthing center? I don't know what's going on. And she's like, well, okay, call. So I called the birthing center, and I said, listen, I think my water broke, and I'm not really sure. But I just wanted to make a sandwich and take a nap. So can I come in tomorrow? She was like, no, you need to come now. You're in labor. And I was like, labor? I'm in labor? What? I'm in labor. So I called my friend Renee because she was one that was going to call everybody and let them know I was in labor and everything. So I get to the birthing center, 16 hours. So the first, they were there for a really long time. My friend Renee, my friend Carla, my friend Marva, my friend Ed. Who's missing? Renee, Marva, Carla. Why do I feel like this? Ed and Camille. They're all. So literally it was like this scene from Girlfriends. Renee's in charge of the music. Marva's in charge of the wine because they're all just drinking up all the wine they brought. Camille, I don't even know what she was in charge of. Carla is supposed to be going through these affirmations with me, and she's driving me crazy. And here comes my friend Ed. He found some scrubs, and he's like, so his wife was supposed to be giving birth like a few months later. So he was trying to come in just to see what the whole process was like. So he comes in, he's like, and the midwives come in and they're like, what is going on? Like, I don't even know if this is legal. This one over here is alcohol. But they were there with me for, for the labor. And labor, I'm not gonna say it didn't hurt. But I think that for me, I had visioned in my mind such pain because no woman can ever tell you what it feels like because they forget by the time you ask them. But I was just like, oh my God, like what kind of pain is this? So I'm not gonna say it didn't hurt, but I had a peaceful pregnancy. I was a very happy pregnant woman. For the most part, my labor was pretty happy until, the last hour or two. This bundle of joy, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm somebody's mother. Like, what am I supposed to do? Where are the books? What am I supposed to do? My mother was supposed to be here, So my Aunt Vi and my Aunt Carrie came to stay with me. So my father was actually supposed to come, but when he found out my aunts were coming, he's like, well, I'll take the second shift. So Uncle Louis drove them to Miami. So they came like a couple of days later. I was so grateful. Now they drove me crazy. I think they were with me for like a week and a half. Now, having your aunts come and, they do things that are very old school, and I didn't care what they did. I needed to rest. I was breastfeeding. It was just a beautiful, beautiful time. And I was so grateful for them. And I know that if my mother had been alive, she would have been right there. You know what I mean? So it was just a beautiful, beautiful time. So ironically, my father got sick. Actually transitioned 10 days after Naya was born. So it was a very interesting time for me because it was a bittersweet, to mourn your father after you've just given birth to your daughter, you know. He didn't get a chance to see her, you know. He did know that she was born, and I had a chance to and everything, but it was just, you know, it was a challenging kind of time, you know, mentally for me. But I really felt like both of my parents were just there for me, and I drew a lot of comfort, you know, from that. So I remember 3 weeks in, you know, I'm still kind of going through the motions because I'm still not believing that I'm really responsible for some other person besides myself. And, you know, I'm kind of second guessing myself a little bit. And then I remember getting up one day, and it was right before we were going to Unity on the Bay, the church that we belong to. And I went into the bathroom and I said, you know what? I said, you're going to make, and I'm talking to myself in the mirror. And I said, you know, you're going to make some mistakes. You're not going to do everything right. There's going to be times where she's going to be furious with you, or, you know, things are just not going to be right. I said, but everything that you do for her is going to be done with love and intention, and that's going to be enough. And from that on, I walked in my truth of, I'm going to be a great mom, you know. And however that shows up for us, it's not always going to be in a pretty package. You know, her father made kind of a choice not to have anything to really do with her for the first 6.5 years of her life. But I had an amazing, and still have an amazing village of women and men that were, you know, we would do potluck dinners when we were running low on money. You know, we would be there for one another, pick each other's children up from school. And a lot of the women were doulas, they were midwives. It's a very holistic community of women, mostly women. We had maybe two men in the group that were, you know, married. Well, one was married to one of the women, and the other one was one of the fathers. But really, it was just a group of women that, till this day, now some of their children are older, you know, and it's so great to see, you know, they all came right when COVID hit. They came to my house, and they're all, you know, some of them at Howard, and, you know, like, they're all grown up. And it's like, oh my gosh, remember when I used to babysit all you guys, and now they babysit, you know, they don't, no, it doesn't need a babysit anymore, but, you know, they babysat for her. So it's just this whole great thing. We have a rites of passage for the girls and for the boys. So I feel very, very blessed that all of that just was for me. I'm not quite sure what I would have done had they not been. You know, I probably would have figured it out, but it definitely made it so much easier. And then I have a very kind of easygoing, spirited little girl who makes it easy. You know, now that she's going into her 12 and 13, it's a little, I don't know, easy has become weird, but I wouldn't say it's easy anymore. It's just different, but she just has kind of this go with the flow. And I remember one day we were, you know, and I'm a single mom, so sometimes I always couldn't get a babysitter. So I'd take her with me. Like, you know, I'd be like, okay, you come into the meeting. And, you know, her question would always be, Mommy, is this a meeting? Yes, it's a meeting. Okay. So she knew exactly how she was supposed to behave at a meeting. So I remember one time we went to Starbucks for a meeting. And I remember she said, is this chit chat or a meeting? I said, well, it's a meeting, and then we could chit chat. She was like, oh, okay. You know, so people were always impressed with that. She just knew, because she would just be sitting there, she'd doing her work, and they're like, does she talk? I'm like, yeah, but she knows she's not supposed to be talking now, because we have this meeting going, and I need you to sign this contract first. Okay? You know? So I really believe that, you know, she was divinely made for me, and, you know, that she was really brought into my life to teach me many lessons, which she has. She encourages me to look at things differently and look through a different lens. You know, so the daily lessons are what I learned from her. It's so funny. I remember she, one day she had this these princess pajamas, and she was in preschool, And they had like dress up, pajama day. So she wore it. And then the next day she was like, I want to wear the pajamas again. And I was like, well, it's not dress up day. I don't think you can. I was like, but that's preschool. What are they going to say? And she literally wore it for like a week. I had to keep washing it like every day. So the teacher calls me on that Friday and she goes, Miss Harris, she's like, we love Naya. She's so great. She goes, but she actually has all of the children wearing their princess gowns. And we really need the kids to go back to clothes on Monday. So is it possible, for you to let her know so she can let the crew know? And I was like, what? So the funniest thing, her first day of, what was it? I guess it was her first day at the Children's Museum. So I'm trying to think, that wasn't 5th grade. Because she went to it, I did a homeschool program for her when she was younger as well. So she has a kind of a different way of learning and asking questions and, kind of that unlearning in a sense. But I remember I took her to the school and, she gave me a kiss and she's like, okay, bye, mommy. See you later. And I said, okay. And I'm like, tears are just rolling down my eyes. And so the teacher says, okay, Miss Harris, we'll see you later. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, I'll just wait around just in case she, starts crying or something. And they looked at Nia. They were like, yeah, I think she's good. I don't think she's going to start crying because I don't even think she knows you're still here. And I was like, oh, okay. So, well, is there a room that I can kind of stay out and get myself together? I was like, I probably need a little assistance. So they were cracking up. But she's definitely has a lot of me in her personality, which is kind of funny to see. She's got a lot of my mother. She has a very old soul. So I really always believe that's my mother channeled through her, because she has a lot of my mother's qualities, so yeah.
Your mother and my father obviously have something in common. Okay. Their grandparents had 13 children and 68 grandchildren. Okay. And
isn't that something?
Yeah.
I said, isn't that something?
That is. And your mother and my father are first cousins. And my father always likes to talk, brag about how he knew all 67. Okay. Right. That he had a relationship with all 67. All right. But your mother and my father also are one of 9. Okay. So you have, you had 8 aunts and uncles.
Well, it's actually one of 11 because some died. Yeah, I think there was some that died. Well, I don't know if it's on that tree, but I want to say that there was one that was stillborn. And I don't know if they documented. Probably Uncle Louie would have.
Yeah, and I guess that's something we can. Yeah, I think that's something we can probably.
Because I believe that it was more than 9. I believe.
Because there were some that were documented that were, but not under George and Ola. Okay, under George and Ola.
Under my grandmother. I believe my grandmother had one that was stillborn. Okay. I believe. Yeah, 1 or 2.
Okay. All right. Talk about what was your, and again, this is kind of a broad question, but what was your experience with dealing with your aunts and uncles? What was that? Do you have any?
Yeah.
Talk about where your relationships close or?
My mother's sisters and brothers, if my parents went away, I was always at someone's house. I would stay at my Aunt Vi's house. I would stay at my Aunt Blanche's house. 2 weeks out of the summer, I would go to my Aunt Mary's house. Her daughter, Mary Ann's her daughter, Mary Ann, had a daughter named Dawn. And my parents were her godparents. So Dawn would also come to Queens for 2 summers. So when I say, and it was a barbecue, there was barbecue every weekend. Bid whist was a huge thing. Every Friday, if they weren't at my parents' house, they were at Aunt Blanche's house. They would even be at Aunt Vi's house. It was always something family oriented. We went to Great Adventures. We went to, we went to Philadelphia, to my Aunt Belle's house every Labor Day. So every Labor Day weekend we spent in Philadelphia. So it was, like I said, my mother was the one that went to school. She went up to August Martin when Jeffrey got in trouble. And, like one time she went up to August Martin for Aunt Vi's son and found Mo there because he was cutting school from Springfield to hang out with his cousin. So they both got in trouble. So, but yeah, so it was always interesting to see so Uncle Louis has always been like more of the quieter one when he was around all of the siblings. Uncle Cliff, who most of us call Uncle Slick, was cursing somebody out loud. Like he was one of the loud ones. And, so it was always interesting to see the dynamics of the siblings. But one thing that if you were a stranger and you came into the room, one thing that you could always spot out was that there was so much love between all of them. You know what I mean? Even if they disagreed about something, even if they didn't like something that the other person had done, that love was just like, I'd never seen anybody else's family outside of our family, like outside of our extended family, like friends and stuff like that. I just didn't, it's something that you can't even describe. It's just, but anybody that would come, because I always would take people, because they'd be like, oh, bring your friend. And, and they would come for like Thanksgiving, or they would come for a cookout and everything. And that would be the one thing that they would always say is like, oh my God, there's so much love. And they always, anybody that you brought that they didn't know, they would love on you, like you didn't go without a meal. You didn't go without a hug. You went and you felt loved all the time. Like there was no escaping it, so that's what that is something that is extremely, that I'm extremely grateful for, because I know that a lot of people grow up not experiencing that, or if they experience it, they experience it at home, but maybe not their aunts and uncles, not to that extent, so yeah.
It's and I guess just the thing about the size of the family, and your mom was one of 9 or more. My father was one of 9, and you and I didn't meet until we were like, teens, late teens.
And I always wondered, I don't know how that was possible.
Right, especially because the way my father speaks about it is they all had all kinds of interactions. He knew everybody, and he would interact with everybody fairly regularly. But I guess as people started having families, and it was funny because every New Year's Day we would go up to Nate we would go to the armory. Every New Year's Day when I was younger. Like that was like a tradition, it was like New Year's Day, we're gonna get dressed up and we're going there, and I'm like, we going again,
right? But
yeah, I was there. I was there at many of those. Right.
Yeah. So but I it's funny because I'm trying to think, and then we would come to Jersey to go to Vicky's or Blondell's, or so we would be in Jersey. So I think you're right, it was because how old were we when we were on the family reunion?
I want to say we were like 16, 17, 18.
17, right?
Yeah.
Those were some fun days.
Yes. And we had to sit in those meetings. And Blanche was always running things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was too funny.
Yep.
Too funny. And then
but it was just because I just think there was so many, and because you could probably go up and down the line, but we're not going to do that now. You probably go up and down the line with all the cousins and things that you have just from those 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And just like I could do the same thing just from those 9.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because there's so many.
Yeah.
So it was just always a challenge. But that's the Myers thing. But you also,
I was in your wedding.
That's right.
And I was engaged to your roommate.
That's right. That's a story for
How
another
funny
day.
is that? I was like, yeah, that's another story.
And this story is this story is about you. Another thing that there's a commonality of the Myers. There were several Myers that married Jameses, but there were 2 Myers that married Summers. Okay. And I don't know, did you know Ellen Summers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how well I knew her, but I knew her. Yes.
Okay. I
don't have any vivid memory of her, but yes.
I don't really remember her. I do remember Uncle Oscar. Mm-hmm. So, but again, that's another commonality, that there were several Jameses that married Myers, but there were also 2 Summers that married. So, you know, so that's why we have to always be careful when. And
the running joke, I think, with Aunt Blanche would always be like, you know, if I would say, oh, you know, I met this really nice guy, and she'd be like, okay, well, where's he from? Did you ask him if he has Summers and Myers, and what does he look like? Right. And you know, and she'd be like running down all these questions, and I was like, whoa, I just gave him my number. Hold on a second. And then if he did look like he was kin to us, they would just be like, oh, he's related. You gotta get rid of him, you know.
All right.
So yeah.
What do and this is gonna be our last question.
Mm-hmm.
As we are getting on in our ages, what do you want to see for the Myers family going forward? What kinds of things do you want to see? As you know, we know that all of the 13 are gone, and most of the 68 are gone. Mm-hmm. All right, and it's a bunch of other generations. From your perspective, what would you like to see for the Myers family?
So what I would like to see, and it's so funny that you asked that, because I thought about that at the end of the year when I just kind of wrote down some of my intentions for 2021, and I feel a lot of sadness towards the fact that, you know, when I was growing up, I was always surrounded all the time by family. You know what I mean? Because of the proximity of where we all lived. We lived in New York. You know, and even when people lived in different places, I feel like sometimes you saw them a little bit more than maybe now. So what I would love to see is, you know, maybe we start a Zoom with the young kids, you know, and we have something that's kind of fun for them, you know, but also learning who their family is, so that we really pass down all of those stories, you know. And I think I love the fact that we're documenting and stuff like that, because, you know, I always have a bit of sadness when somebody dies, and you know that we didn't really write down all the stories that they had, and when that person dies, some of those stories die with them, because not everybody knows all of the details, or, you know. And I want to make sure that we can continue some of those stories, because that's you know, that's who we are, you know. And I think it's important for us to make sure that our children and the younger generation are equipped with those things, because that's part of our heritage and who we are, and, you know, the strength and the resilience. And sisters all coming up to New York, you know, and George Myers was a super in the Bronx and getting everybody jobs, and then they had apartments, and, you know, like all these different stories. I want, like, we didn't just come and sponge off of people, or we didn't we worked hard, you know, for the things that we wanted, and we stayed together as a family, even when we disagreed. You know, you still had love for everyone. So that's what I'd like to see. And I will make sure that I'm part of helping to spearhead that, or roll my sleeves up to help with that.
Great. Yvette, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of these great stories.
That was fun.
Great.
So you don't want to talk about Rodney, or, you know, anyway? Okay. Just kidding.
Okay. Derek, how did that go?
That was great. That was great.
That was like, cut that part out.
She wasn't my wedding. She was engaged to my roommate.
Listen, what I learned from Kevin's wedding is don't go to somebody's wedding and fall in love with somebody at the wedding, and you got all those wedding feelings, and then you come back home and
especially and then find out especially that couple that got married is going to get divorced eventually.
Say that, but we didn't know then.
Right?
We didn't know then.
Right. So, Derek, you thought it was good?
Yeah, it was excellent. It was great getting to know you. It was. I didn't know anything about that, and now I feel like I know so much about you now. I'm pretty sure there's always much more.
Right.
I never knew I had somebody like that in my family that was part of PR and met these people, met my crush, Rosario Dawson. I didn't want to stay here. I was like, I'm gonna leave it to you. I was like, oh, you gonna bring up that Corey guy? But no, it was really nice. It was nice.
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun.
It was good hearing. It was good hearing all of those stories because there's so many of that I can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's similar. Listening to my father. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
when some of the stuff that you were talking about, I remember him talking about, and we could probably all of us could probably talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
George was a super. My father and they were supers. They were all supers. Okay, and they lived in the basement. They all had to share rooms. They all, I don't know.
Isn't that just so just wild when you think about that? And how everybody was really able to come up from the South because they had a place to live, and because he would get him a super job, and then if you were super, then you had an apartment, and it was that's just how they did things,
Right.
And then my parents helped Aunt Blanche first, I think, with their to buy their house, and then, or I think we might have been the first ones, and mother made sure that that's just how they did it, like the down payment, they all helped one another to purchase their homes, so that they can all live in Queens in a close proximity to one another. So a lot of good history, a lot of good stories, a lot of funny stories, a lot of stories that we do definitely want buried. We don't want to come out there. Like, oh my God.
And it is funny, you were saying how Louis, your uncle Louis, is the quiet one, okay, and yet he's still going strong as the quiet one.
Yeah. But you know what? He would be the quiet one, but when he had something to say, and the other ones were like, he would, I guess, use his military voice, and he would be like, "Listen, Slick." Because my Uncle Slick would be like, "What?" Cursing everybody out, and Uncle Louis would come back with a couple of choice words himself, and it would be like, "Wow, did Uncle Louis just say that to Uncle Slick?" What?
Did you see his podcast? Did you see his?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, when he's talking about being a hurricane hunter and flying into the storm. I mean, it's some amazing stuff.
And we used to come to Miami, so we would go to Jacksonville for Easter, some Easters, and then Uncle Louis would rent an RV, and we would always come to Miami, and we would stay in Miami for a little, like a week or so, well, a couple of days, and then we go back and stay in Jacksonville, and then we go back home. So in 1976. I have to find the picture. We were Frankie Avalon. Which one is the singer?
Frankie Valli is the singer.
Yes, you can have him. Okay. Frankie, wait. So who sings "Swear to God"? Frankie Valli. Frankie
Valli.
Right. He apparently was performing on the beach. And we all went to the beach that day, and I, with my talkative self, apparently had wandered off from the beach, to the next blanket or so. And it happened to be him And then, you know, my parents were like looking frantically for me, and then they realized I was right there. And, you know, Frankie apparently brought me back over. And, you know, I think the only reason my mother didn't kill me at the time was because he's like, oh, no, there was no problem. You know, I'd love for you guys to come see my show. And they went to see him because I had wandered over there. So that was my only saving grace that my mother didn't light into me for walking away.
Now,
so I have to find that picture because it was like, I think it was 1976 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, now, Derek,
but we used to come down here all the time to visit in Jacksonville. So that's why when I decided I was going to move to Miami, everybody in Jacksonville was like, oh, you're not going to move to Jacksonville? I was like,
that's the reason I didn't. That's exactly the reason why I didn't move to Jacksonville, because I moved to Orlando when I first came to Florida. I had a choice, Jacksonville or Orlando. I said no, Orlando. So because I wanted to have my own world.
Yeah, listen, you can't
really do that up there.
I was like, I need to be able to get in the car and leave, and I'll come visit.
Yeah.
But I can't live here with all of y'all.
Because I remember, I
don't really like Jacksonville.
I remember going to Jacksonville to visit Louie and Hilda, and immediately after getting there, we're going to Carrie's house, and I knew that was what they did, and I was like, that's why I wanted to live down there. Yes. So now, Derek, did you know that Louie and my father were born a day apart?
I didn't know that.
In the same town.
Oh, wow.
A day apart. Louis was November 1st, 1933. Mm-hmm. Daddy was November 2nd, 1933.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep. And both of them are the last two in their lives.
Siblings. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're close. They're very close. Mm-hmm. So
how did your family wind up in Jersey?
Okay, so my father, after he got out of the military, they had that whole thing that if you were a B student or better, you could go to City College for free. And he had decided he wanted to become an electrical engineer when he got out of the military. So that meant he had to study. But by this time, he's got 2 kids. So he's trying to, he's going to school. He's working for the New York City subway, and doing everything that he could to, make sure it ends met, for the family. Well, after he got his degrees and things were starting to move along, he went to work for Bell Laboratories.
Bell Atlantic?
No, Bell Laboratories. There's no Bell Atlantic.
Oh, yet. Bell Laboratories, right? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Bell Laboratories, and as an engineer, and they moved his team to Homedale, New Jersey. So so this was in 1964. So in the beginning he was making the drive back and forth. Okay, but eventually it just got to be too much, and they decided to move out to Jersey. So Middletown is right next to Homedale, which is where Bell Labs is.
Right.
It's still there. Okay. So so that's how they ended up in
Jersey.
That was in the 1964, beginning of 1965. And then I was born in 1965.
Okay, so right after they moved.
Right. So I'm the Jersey kid.
Oh. I always wanted to know how you guys wound up in Jersey.
Yeah, and then what ended up happening was as time went on, little by little, other people started coming to Jersey. Okay.
Right.
Just even people that, that were not necessarily, related to the family, but they were close to the family. Because, we got these friends that, they're just like family. And little by little, some of them started moving.
They also coming to Jersey.
And some other, Derek's father moved out to Jersey, and people started coming out to Jersey. So I think Pat was one of the first of our cousins who came out. Okay, right. She moved to Parlin.
Yeah, because what part of Jersey did she live in again?
She lived in Parlin, and then she lived in Parlin, which is up around Sayreville. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's up around Sayreville. So so she lived there, but then we find out that's not far from where Stanley lived. Okay, so there were already others that were out there. Didn't really necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing with your family, and I, certainly I know your mom, and I knew most of your aunts and uncles, but I didn't necessarily know their kids. And that's where I got it, where it gets to be confusing because, I look at somebody like Stanley and I think of him as being, my father's first cousin when he's not.
Okay? He's not.
And and there's a whole bunch of people that are in there that, there's a whole generation. So that's, what Eric didn't know that he didn't even know. I don't think he knew you.
But Eric, I don't even know. Eric just forgot because Eric, I don't know how he doesn't remember me because it would be me, him, Spanky, Stanley, and Howie. And
which Stanley though? Stanley Jr.
Stanley, I'm sorry, Stanley Jr., Spanky.
Okay.
Howie, because whenever I would go to Howie Dingle, who was Aunt Blanche's grandson, or they would come to Queens, it would be Spanky, Stanley, Eric, Brian, and I sometimes would be the only girl, or Valerie Myers would be there as well. And they would always be teasing us. So it's interesting that he doesn't remember that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when he said that, I was like, what? Really, Eric? Oh my gosh. Your memory is bad.
and like I said, the only reason I know Eric is because he used to hang out with Junie, meaning less junior, and also Nate and Daryl. Okay, because he was in that same age range, so I used to see him there. But I didn't know his father, who's also in that next generation, Leon. Right. Okay, yeah. I didn't know Leon, and the only time how I remember Leon, his funeral. And the way that everybody was talking about him, I was like, dang, I wish I had known him.
Yeah, well, Leon was really, really nice guy.
Right, but that's funny. But that was the first time I found out that was Eric's father.
Yeah,
Eric and Crystal's father. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Eric and Crystal. Yeah, Crystal. Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so that's the thing about we have so many people.
Yeah.
We don't know where all of these people are. So hopefully, we'll be able to continue to try to find, some more, people. I mean, Blanche has, with her grandkids. I mean, where are all of them? So
Atlanta, Jersey.
Yeah. Yep.
Harlem.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, just we are massive. And, as we go, and we just have to kind of figure out how we're going to make sure that we capture it all.
Yeah. Yeah. So we could use this as this isn't our test. Like this was it, right?
It could be. It could.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
we could use it.
Footage and
we could
use it. A work in progress.
Just put a little lip color on me. I'm just kidding.